Every single day, approximately 1,200 people move to Texas, not per month, per day. That's 50 people an hour, around the clock, 7 days a week. Since 2010, Texas has added more than 4 million residents, more new people than the entire population of Los Angeles. It is the largest sustained internal migration in modern American history, and nobody's quite sure if Texas can handle it. Texas has always been a place of self-invention. The mythology of the Lone Star State is built on reinvention. From frontier territory to cotton empire to oil behemoth to tech corridor, each transition brought a new wave of migrants and a new economic identity, but the current wave of growth is different in both scale and composition. It is faster, more geographically concentrated, and more demographically diverse than anything the state has seen before. And it is straining systems, communities, and political assumptions that were built for a very different Texas. The state that sold itself on low taxes, low regulation, and affordable space is discovering that explosive growth has a price, and that price is coming due. Let's start with where the growth is actually happening. Texas's population boom is not evenly distributed across 268,000 square miles of territory. It is concentrated in 5 metro areas: Dallas-Fort Worth, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, and the Rio Grande Valley. Combined, these metros have absorbed the vast majority of Texas's new residents, creating a set of rapidly expanding urban agglomerations that are growing faster than their infrastructure can accommodate. Austin is the most extreme example. The city has grown by more than 30% in the last decade. Home prices that were considered reasonable as recently as 2019 have, in many neighborhoods, more than doubled. The median home price in Austin briefly surpassed San Francisco's during the pandemic peak. Traffic on the I-35 corridor, already a byword for congestion before the growth surge, has become a defining feature of daily life in a way that residents describe as fundamentally changing the character of the city. The deeper problem is structural. Texas has no state income tax, a feature that is central to its marketing pitch to incoming residents and businesses. Its revenue model depends heavily on property taxes and sales taxes. And here's the tension. Explosive growth drives up property values, which raises property tax burdens on existing residents, even as it generates more revenue for local governments. The people most likely to be pushed out of growing Texas cities are lower and middle-income residents, often the longtime Texans whose communities are being transformed by the very growth that made their state attractive in the first place. Understanding why Texas is growing so fast requires understanding 3 converging forces that arrive simultaneously. The first is corporate relocation. Texas has aggressively courted businesses through a combination of no state income tax, relatively low corporate taxes, a permissive regulatory environment, and, crucially, a state government that responds quickly and predictably to business requests. The results have been dramatic. Tesla moved its headquarters to Austin, Oracle moved to Austin, HP moved to Houston, AT&T American Airlines, and Charles Schwab all relocated their headquarters to the Dallas area within a few years of each other. Where corporate headquarters go, high-paying jobs follow, and where high-paying jobs go, workers follow. The second force is the work-from-home revolution accelerated by the pandemic. When millions of white-collar workers were suddenly untethered from office locations, many of them asked a simple question: if I can work from anywhere, where would I actually want to live? For a significant number of workers from California, New York, and other high-cost states, the answer was Texas. Lower cost of living, more space, no state income tax on what were often substantial salaries. The math was compelling. Austin in particular became a magnet for remote tech workers, rapidly developing the cultural infrastructure. Restaurants, music venues, outdoor recreation, that makes it feel like a recognizable peer to the cities these workers had left. The third force is something less discussed but perhaps most significant: Texas's regulatory permissiveness around land and development. In most large American cities, building new housing is extraordinarily difficult. Zoning restrictions, neighborhood opposition, environmental review processes, and lengthy permitting timelines mean that even when demand surges, supply responds slowly. Texas, particularly its major cities, has historically been much more permissive about construction. Houston famously has no traditional zoning code at all. This permissiveness has allowed the housing supply to respond to demand faster than in most American markets. But faster is not the same as fast enough. Even Texas's relatively permissive construction environment has struggled to keep pace with the sheer volume of incoming residents. And the places where housing supply has not kept pace, downtown Austin, central Dallas neighborhoods, inner Houston, have seen the same price escalation that has made coastal cities unaffordable. The infrastructure crisis is perhaps the most tangible consequence of growth outpacing planning. Texas's power grid, which operates independently from the rest of the continental United States through the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT, failed catastrophically in February 2021 when a severe winter storm caused demand to surge just as generation capacity froze. More than 200 people died, and the economic damage exceeded $195 billion by some estimates. The fundamental problem was a grid that had not been updated or hardened at a pace commensurate with population growth and changing climate conditions. Water is an even more existential concern. Texas is a water-stressed state in a region that climate models consistently predict will become drier. The explosive growth in cities like Austin and San Antonio is occurring against a backdrop of declining aquifer levels and increasing pressure on the Colorado and Guadalupe river systems. San Antonio relies almost entirely on the Edwards Aquifer, a limestone aquifer that is finite, is being drawn down faster than it is being recharged, and has no obvious replacement. The Texas Water Development Board estimates that the state will face a water supply shortfall of more than 3 million acre-feet per year by 2070 if current growth trends continue without new supply infrastructure. Transportation infrastructure is the third domain under acute stress. Texas has historically been a road-building state. Highways are its urban organizing principle in a way that is even more pronounced than most American metros, but the pace of growth is defeating the road-building model. The Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex has added hundreds of miles of highway lanes in the last 2 decades and has simultaneously seen average commute times increase significantly. The induced demand problem, the well-documented phenomenon in which new road capacity generates new traffic that fills it to the same congestion level as before, is playing out in Texas at an enormous scale. The economic impact of Texas's growth is, by most aggregate measures, positive. The state's GDP has grown dramatically, employment levels are high, corporate investment continues to flow in. By conventional metrics, Texas is a success story, but the distributional effects are much more complicated. The working class and lower middle class Texans who were attracted to the state by its historic affordability are finding themselves priced out of the cities where economic opportunity is concentrated. A construction worker who moved to Austin in 2015 because he could afford a modest house is now watching that same house trade hands for 3 times what he paid. He likely cannot afford to buy back into the market if he sells. He is, in the language of economics, being displaced by the very growth that validated his earlier decision. The demographic transformation of Texas's cities is also generating significant political tension. The Texas that most Americans picture, conservative, rural, oil-rich, coexists uneasily with a Texas in which the 4 largest cities all elected Democratic mayors, and in which a growing young, diverse, highly educated urban population holds fundamentally different views on policy from the state's rural and suburban political base. Growth, in other words, is changing Texas's internal politics in ways that will have national implications. Texas matters nationally for the same reason California mattered in the 20th century. It is the laboratory where the tension between growth and livability is being played out at maximum scale, maximum speed, and maximum visibility. What Texas figures out, or fails to figure out, about water, energy, housing, and transportation will offer lessons and warnings for rapidly growing regions around the country and around the world. The growth is not going to stop in any near-term scenario. The fundamentals that are driving it, tax policy, business climate, housing supply relative to coastal alternatives, remain intact. Population forecasts consistently project that Texas will add millions more residents over the next 2 decades. The Texas Demographic Center projects the state could have a population of 40 million or more by 2050, up from roughly 30 million today. The question is whether Texas's political class has the will and capacity to make the investments that growth requires. Infrastructure at the necessary scale requires public spending that sits uneasily with the anti-government, low-tax ideology that is central to the state's political identity. The water crisis requires regional cooperation and long-term planning that has historically been in short supply. The affordability crisis requires land use reforms that will face intense opposition from property owners whose wealth is tied to existing restrictions. Texas grew its way to prosperity. It is now discovering that prosperity brings its own set of problems that the old Texas playbook was not designed to solve. The state has enormous assets: land, energy resources, a dynamic economy, and a culture of pragmatic problem solving that has navigated challenges before. But the scale of what's coming, in terms of population, in terms of climate stress, in terms of infrastructure demands is unlike anything Texas has previously encountered. The Lone Star State has always defined itself by its capacity for reinvention. The next reinvention may be the most consequential one yet.